They thought money could buy anything, even my badge. But when a routine parking ticket escalated into a threat against my family, I knew some things were priceless. My shift was supposed to end in 20 minutes. 20 minutes stood between me and a cold beer, my worn-out recliner, and the blissful silence of my empty apartment. That's when the call came over the radio. Normally, a parking violation wouldn't even be a blip on my radar, but this one was special. Dispatch described it as a public nuisance, which was code for someone with more money than sense is causing a scene. The vehicle in question? A flamingo-pink G-Wagon parked squarely in front of a fire hydrant on one of the busiest, most expensive streets in the city. I sighed, flicking the siren on for a second, just to part the sea of yellow cabs and black town cars. My name is Officer Caprio. I've been on the force for 15 years, and I've seen it all. Or so I thought. Pulling up, the car was even more obnoxious in person. It wasn't just pink. It was a blinding, Pepto-Bismol, look at me I'm rich kind of pink. The kind of color that screams entitlement. It was so perfectly, aggressively parked in the red zone that it felt less like a mistake and more like a declaration of war on civil obedience. I got out of my cruiser, my ticket book already in hand. This was routine. Write the ticket, stick it under the wiper, and move on. No need for a confrontation. But as I was filling out the vehicle make and model, the glass door of a ridiculously overpriced boutique swung open. Out walked a woman who looked like she was genetically engineered in a lab to be annoying. She was probably in her early 20s, dripping in designer logos that clashed so badly it gave me a headache. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a ponytail so tight it looked like it was stretching her face. She was on her phone, laughing at something, and didn't even see me until she was right at the G-Wagon's bumper. She stopped dead. Her perfectly manicured fingers, clutching a phone with a diamond-encrusted case, lowered slowly. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look of utter disbelief, as if she'd just seen a dog walking on its hind legs. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension that takes years of practice to perfect. "What do you think you're doing?" I didn't look up from my ticket book. "Ma'am, I'm writing a citation. Your vehicle is illegally parked and blocking a fire hydrant." She let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded like a startled bird. "A citation? You can't be serious. I was just in there for 5 minutes. Do you have any idea how much my dress cost? I can't be expected to walk a whole block from the parking garage." I finally looked up, meeting her cold blue eyes. I kept my face neutral, a skill you learn early on in this job. "Ma'am, the law applies to everyone, regardless of the cost of their dress. You need to move your vehicle." She scoffed, stepping closer. I could smell her perfume. It was expensive and suffocating. "Look, just rip that up. I'm sure we can come to an understanding." She opened her tiny, pointless-looking purse and started to fish around inside, as if she was about to pull out a wad of cash. I put a hand up. "That won't be necessary, Mom. I'm just doing my job. Here's your ticket." I tore it from the pad and held it out to her. She looked at the piece of paper in my hand like it was a dead rat. She refused to take it. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows furrowed, and a storm cloud passed over her face. She was realizing her usual tactics weren't working. The annoyance was curdling into genuine anger. "Do you know who my mother is?" she snapped. Ah, there it was. The classic line. I swear they must teach it in Rich Kid 101. "No, ma'am, I do not. And it has no bearing on this situation." She's Elaine Blythe," she said, puffing out her chest as if she had just revealed she was the Queen of England. "She sits on the board of the Police Benevolent Fund. She could have you fired. In fact," she added, a cruel little smile playing on her lips, "she could probably have this whole precinct shut down if she felt like it." I just stood there, holding the ticket, my patience wearing thinner than the soles of my boots. The part of my brain that still had a sense of humor was picturing this little brat trying to explain to her mother why she was leveraging a charity fund to get out of a parking ticket. "That's nice," I said, my voice flat. "This is your copy." That's when she crossed the line. She looked me up and down, a sneer of pure disgust on her face. She took in my standard-issue uniform, my scuffed shoes, my simple watch. Her gaze was a physical thing, designed to make me feel small, worthless. And then she said the words that would echo in my head for the rest of the day. "You know what? Forget it." She waved a dismissive hand. "My mom can just buy you. Tell me your price. I'm sure it's not much." The air went still. The traffic noise, the city, hum. It all just faded away. All I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears. She didn't just insult me. She tried to put a price tag on my badge, on my integrity, on my very existence as a person. I took a slow, deep breath, trying to cage the anger that was roaring to life inside my chest. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw nothing but a spoiled child in a woman's body. I slowly placed the ticket under her windshield wiper. "Have a nice day, Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm. I turned my back on her, a clear dismissal, and started walking back to my cruiser. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. I heard a rip of paper behind me. I turned just in time to see her march up to me, her face twisted in a mask of pure fury. In her hand were the shredded remains of the ticket. "I am not a ma'am to you," she shrieked, and then she threw the pieces of the ticket directly into my face. The tiny bits of paper fluttered around me. But she wasn't done. As I stood there, stunned, she shoved me hard in the chest. "Get out of my face, you peasant." That's when the whole world seemed to slow down. The shove wasn't hard enough to knock me over, but it was a clear, unambiguous physical assault. My hand, almost moving of its own accord, went to my radio on my shoulder. I keyed the mic, my voice low and steady, a complete contrast to the storm brewing inside me. "Dispatch, this is 7 Atom 12. I need backup at my location. I'm making an arrest for assault on a police officer." The woman's face, already flushed with anger, went stark white. The word arrest hung in the air between us, thick and unbelievable. Her jaw worked for a moment, but no sound came out. It was as if her brain simply couldn't process the concept. People like her didn't get arrested. They made phone calls, they wrote checks, they made problems disappear. I was a problem that was refusing to disappear. "Arrest me?" she finally stammered, a hysterical giggle escaping her lips. "You can't be serious. You're a joke." "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," I said, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. I unhooked my cuffs from my belt, the metallic click echoing in the sudden quiet. That sound seemed to snap her out of her shock and straight into a full-blown panic. "No, get away from me. You can't touch me." She took a step back, stumbling over the curb, her expensive heels wobbling on the uneven pavement. I moved forward, calmly, deliberately. "Ma'am, don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Harder?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. Her eyes darted around, looking for an escape, an ally, anyone. She saw only the growing crowd of onlookers, their phones held up like digital torches, recording her spectacular downfall. The humiliation turned her panic back into rage. "Get your filthy hands off of me," she screamed as my hand closed around her arm. She began to struggle, thrashing like a wild animal. It was pathetic, really. All that money, all that power her mother supposedly had, and here she was, flailing on a city sidewalk. She tried to slap my hand away, her long nails scratching at my wrist. "I'll have your badge. You'll be living in a box. My mother will." I didn't let her finish. With a quick, practiced movement, I spun her around and pushed her against the side of her ridiculous pink car. The thud of her body against the metal was surprisingly loud. She let out a gasp of shocked air. Before she could recover, I had her wrists secured behind her back. The handcuffs clicked shut, a sound of finality. "You have the right to remain silent," I began, reciting the Miranda rights in a steady monotone as she continued to spew threats and insults. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." My backup, a young officer named Miller, arrived just as I was finishing. He pulled up, took one look at the seen me, a seasoned officer, holding a screaming socialite in designer clothes against her own G-Wagon, and got out of his car without a word, his face a mask of professional neutrality. He knew not to question a senior officer's judgment call in the field, especially one as by the book as me. "Help me," she wailed at Miller, as if he were her last hope. "This lunatic is kidnapping me. My mother is Elaine Blythe." Miller just nodded at me. "Got her, Cap." "I got her," I confirmed. "Call for a tow. This thing is still blocking a hydrant." That was the final indignity. The thought of her precious car being dragged away by a greasy tow truck sent her into another fit. I had to practically drag her to the back of my cruiser. She kicked and writhed, her heels scraping against the asphalt. "This is assault! I'm being brutalized!" she yelled for the benefit of the phone cameras. I finally managed to get her into the back seat and slammed the door shut. The plexiglass divider muffled her screams to a dull, impotent buzz. I got into the driver's seat, the adrenaline finally starting to fade, replaced by a deep, bone-wearying exhaustion. This was not how I wanted to end my shift. The ride to the station was a 10-minute masterclass in entitled rage. She rattled off a list of lawyers whose names I recognized from high-profile corporate lawsuits. She threatened to sue the city, the department, and me personally. She promised that by morning, I'd be lucky to get a job as a security guard at a dog food factory. I just drove, my eyes on the road. You know, I said, my voice even, the charges are assault on an officer, which is a felony, resisting arrest, vandalism of city property for ripping up the ticket, and, of course, the original parking violation. You're going to need a very, very good lawyer. That shut her up, but only for a moment. Just wait, she seethed from the back, her voice low and venomous now. Just you wait until my mother gets there. She will crush you. I didn't doubt her mother was powerful. I'd been on the force long enough to know that money and influence could bend the rules, sometimes to the breaking point. But shoving a cop and getting arrested on a busy street corner in front of dozens of witnesses with cameras, that was going to be a hard thing to spin. We pulled into the sally port of the 17th precinct. The heavy steel door rolled down behind us, sealing us inside the concrete belly of the station. The glamour of her life was miles away now. Here, there were just cinder block walls, the smell of disinfectant, and the unshakable weight of the law. I got out and opened her door. Her face was pale, her makeup smudged from a combination of sweat and tears. The fight seemed to have gone out of her. She looked small and scared. For a split second I almost felt a flicker of pity for her. Almost. I led her toward the booking desk, my hand on her elbow. The desk sergeant, a grizzled old cop named Henderson, looked up from his crossword puzzle, raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He'd seen it all too. And then I heard it. A screech of tires from just outside the sally port, followed by a series of sharp, authoritative bangs on the steel door. It wasn't the sound of another cruiser. It was impatient, demanding. Henderson sighed and pressed the button to raise the door. A sleek, black Bentley, the kind that costs more than my house, was parked inches from the entrance. The driver's side door flew open and a woman emerged. She was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark power suit, her face sharp and severe. She radiated an aura of absolute terrifying control. There was no doubt in my mind who she was. Elaine Blythe strode into the precinct like she owned it. Her cold, intelligent eyes scanned the room and locked onto me. She ignored her daughter, who was now whimpering her name. Her gaze was fixed entirely on me, a look so intense it felt like a physical pressure. She stopped 10 feet away from us, her expensive leather briefcase clicking against the grimy linoleum floor. "Officer," she said, her voice a low, chilling whisper that cut through the air. "I believe you have my daughter. You have made a catastrophic mistake." I met her gaze without flinching. "No mistake, ma'am," I said, my voice level. "Your daughter is under arrest for felony assault on a police officer, resisting arrest and destruction of city property. She is being processed accordingly." Behind me, her daughter Chloe started to wail. "Mommy, he was horrible. He grabbed me. He hurt my wrist." She held up her perfectly unharmed wrist as if it were a broken limb. Elaine Blythe's eyes didn't even flicker toward her daughter. Her focus was entirely on me, a predator sizing up its prey. The air in the precinct booking room crackled with a tension so thick you could feel it on your skin. Even Henderson had stopped his crossword puzzle and was watching us over the top of his glasses. "Destruction of property," Elaine repeated, a hint of amused disbelief in her tone. "Are you referring to the parking ticket? Let's not be dramatic, officer. When it's an official citation and it's thrown in an officer's face, the charge is appropriate," I stated, keeping my tone strictly professional. "As is the assault charge, which occurred when she physically shoved me during the course of my duties." "A shove," she said, her lips curling into a dismissive sneer. "My daughter is 110 pounds soaking wet. You're claiming you were assaulted by a girl who probably couldn't open a pickle jar on her own?" She took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Listen to me very carefully, officer. Caprio." She said my name as if it tasted foul. "I know Captain Davis personally. We have lunch. I'm going to make one phone call, and this entire embarrassing episode will vanish. The only thing that will remain is a black mark on your record, so permanent, you'll be directing traffic in Staten Island for the rest of your career. Do you understand?" This was the moment of truth, the point where a lesser man might fold. I could feel the weight of her influence pressing down, the silent suggestion from the universe that I should just let it go. It would be easier, simpler. But then I thought of her daughter's words. "My mom can just buy you." And a cold resolve hardened in my gut. Some things aren't for sale. "I understand you're upset, ma'am," I said calmly, "but the arrest stands. There were dozens of witnesses, and the entire incident was recorded on multiple cell phones. I'm sure the videos will be online before your daughter even makes her phone call." The mention of video evidence made her pause. A flicker of something not fear, but calculation passed through her eyes. She was re-evaluating her strategy. The mask of cold fury was replaced by one of condescending reason. "All right," she said, as if speaking to a child. "Clearly you're in over your head. I'd like to speak to your commanding officer." Now. Right on cue, the door to the captain's office opened. Captain Davis stood there, a man in his late 50s with tired eyes that had seen too many nights like this. He was a good cop and a fair boss, but he was also a politician in a uniform, constantly navigating the treacherous waters between the department and the city's powerful elite. He looked at Elaine Blythe, then at me, and his expression tightened. He knew exactly what he was walking into. "Elaine," he said, his voice strained, "I heard you were here. Why don't you come into my office?" He glanced at me. "Caprio, you too." We walked into his small, cluttered office. He closed the door, shutting out the noise of the precinct and sealing the three of us in a pressure cooker. Elaine immediately took charge, launching into a tirade about my supposed aggression, my unprofessionalism, my clear vendetta against her family. Chloe was painted as a terrified victim, and I was the villain, a power-drunk brute with a badge. Captain Davis listened patiently, his hands steepled on his desk. When she was done, he turned to me. "Caprio, your report." I gave him the facts, and only the facts. The fire hydrant, the refusal to take the ticket, the line about her mother buying me, the torn citation, the shove. I laid it all out, clean and simple. I watched as Elaine's face tightened with every word. She wasn't used to people speaking about her or her family with such unvarnished truth. "There's video, Captain," I concluded. "From multiple angles. It will corroborate everything I've said." Davis let out a long, slow breath. He looked at Elaine. "Elaine, this is problematic. An assault charge, on camera. That's not something I can just make disappear. My hands are tied." "Your hands are not tied, Robert," she hissed, her voice dropping the pretense of civility. "They're tied when you want them to be. I fund half the new vests in your department. I organized the gala that paid for your new dispatch system. You will untie them." The captain's jaw clenched. "This isn't about vests or galas. It's about a felony complaint filed by one of my officers. I can't force him to drop the charges." He looked at me, a silent plea in his eyes. He was giving me an out, a chance to be the reasonable one, and de-escalate. Elaine saw it too. She turned her full attention back to me. The mask was completely gone now. All that was left was a raw, reptilian menace. "Officer Caprio," she said, her voice dangerously soft. "Let's be practical. My daughter was foolish. She's a child. This can all be forgotten. I'm prepared to make a significant donation to the Police Benevolent Fund in your name. A gesture of goodwill. Think of it as an apology for the misunderstanding." It was the same offer her daughter had made, just wrapped in a more elegant package. An attempt to buy me, to put a price on my integrity. I looked her straight in the eye. "Thank you for the offer, Mrs. Blythe. But it's not a misunderstanding. It's a crime. I'm not dropping the charges." A deathly silence filled the room. Captain Davis looked like he wanted to crawl under his desk. Elaine Blythe simply stared at me, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a slow, cold smile spread across her face. It didn't reach her eyes. "Very well, officer," she whispered. "You want to play by the book? Let's play by the book." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a slim, expensive-looking tablet. Her fingers flew across the screen. "You know, it's amazing what you can find out about people these days." She turned the tablet around to face me. On the screen was a picture. It wasn't of me. It was a picture of a little boy, no older than 7, with bright red hair and a face full of freckles, kicking a soccer ball in a suburban backyard. "That's a lovely house your sister has in Albany," Elaine Blythe said, her voice like ice. "It'd be a real shame if something happened to it, or to her son Liam. He's so fragile, isn't he?" My blood ran cold. The air in the captain's office suddenly felt thin, unbreathable. All the professionalism, all the calculated calm I had maintained, shattered in an instant. This wasn't about a parking ticket anymore. It wasn't about lawsuits or black marks on my record. She had brought my family into it. She had threatened my nephew, my sister's little boy. For a split second, a primal rage unlike anything I had ever felt surged through me. I wanted to lunge across the desk. I wanted to wipe that smug, calculating smile off her face, but I didn't. I couldn't. I was a police officer, and she knew it. She was counting on my discipline, using the very rules I lived by as a weapon against me. Captain Davis shot to his feet. "Elaine, that's enough," he boomed, his voice echoing in the small office. "You've crossed a line." But she didn't even look at him. Her eyes were still locked on me, enjoying the effect her words were having. "Have I?" she murmured. "I'm simply admiring his family photos. It's all public information, Robert. Social media is a fascinating tool. You can find out where people live, where their children go to school." I took a deep, shuddering breath, forcing the white-hot anger down. I had to think. Panicking was what she wanted. Folding was what she expected. But I was a cop. I dealt with criminals every single day, and that's exactly what she was. Her suit was just a different kind of disguise. "Captain," I said, my voice tight but steady, "I'd like to add witness intimidation and making terroristic threats to Mrs. Blythe's charges." Davis stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. Elaine Blythe actually laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. "Don't be absurd," she scoffed. "You have no proof of any threat." That's when I looked down at my own hand, which had been resting on the edge of the captain's desk. My thumb was pressed firmly on the side of my radio, activating the small, discreet recording function built into the shoulder mic on my uniform. It was a habit I'd developed years ago for traffic stops that felt like they might go south. A little insurance policy. I had activated it the moment we stepped into the office. I lifted my hand, and my thumb slid off the button. I looked from Elaine to the captain and back again. "Actually," I said, my voice ringing with a newfound confidence, "I think you'll find I do." The color drained from Elaine Blythe's face. The smugness, the power, the absolute certainty. It all evaporated in a single, heart-stopping moment of realization. She looked at the small black microphone clipped to my epaulette as if it were a venomous snake. She had been so focused on her own power play, so convinced of her untouchability, that she never even considered I might be playing a different game entirely. Captain Davis's eyes widened. A slow smile spread across his face, a look of genuine, unadulterated relief. He knew exactly what that recording meant. It was clean. It was undeniable. It was a silver bullet. "Well, Elaine," he said, leaning back in his chair, "it appears Officer Caprio is correct. You did just threaten his family in front of a police captain, and I'm now a witness to it." He picked up his phone. "Henderson, get another officer in here. We have one more to process, and call the DA's office. Tell them we have a big one." Elaine Blythe was speechless. She just stood there, her tablet slipping from her numb fingers and clattering onto the desk. The fight was over. She hadn't just lost. She had been utterly and completely outplayed. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The story exploded. The cell phone videos of Chloe's tantrum went viral, becoming a meme overnight. The media dubbed her the pink G-Wagon princess. But the real story was her mother. The recording of her threat was leaked. I still don't know how, but I suspect Captain Davis has a friend or two in the press, and the public backlash was immense. Elaine Blythe, the powerful socialite, the untouchable queen of the city's elite, was brought crashing down to earth. The Police Benevolent Fund immediately removed her from the board. Other charities followed suit. Her husband's law firm faced a barrage of negative press. The Blythe empire, built on a foundation of influence and intimidation, began to crumble under the weight of public shame. Chloe ended up pleading guilty to the assault and resisting charges. Her lawyer managed to keep her out of jail, but she got a hefty fine, a year of probation, and 200 hours of community service, which, I later heard, involved her scrubbing toilets at a homeless shelter. I doubt she'll be parking in front of a fire hydrant again any time soon. Her mother's case was far more serious. Faced with the undeniable recording, she pleaded no contest to witness intimidation. She avoided prison time, but her reputation was destroyed. She became a pariah in the circles she once commanded. As for me, the department gave me a commendation. Captain Davis shook my hand and told me I'd made the whole force proud. For a week, I was a minor celebrity, the cop who couldn't be bought. But it faded, as all things do. I went back to my patrol, back to my routine. The other night, I was finishing up a long shift, thinking about that cold beer and my worn-out recliner. A call came over the radio, a fender bender a few blocks away. I pulled up, and one of the drivers was a kid, maybe 19, scared out of his mind. It was his dad's car. He looked at me, at my uniform and my badge, with a kind of terrified respect. I helped him exchange information, calmed him down, and sent him on his way. He called me sir. He didn't try to bribe me. He didn't ask if I knew who his mother was. He just saw a cop, doing his job, and in that quiet, simple moment, I knew I had made the right choice. Some things are worth more than any price tag. My badge is one of them.